So back in February of 2021, I made the best stance for every legend in the game, and I figured, been over 365 days, why not do another? Things have changed. There are 3 new legends, which it's kind of crazy to think that over a year ago, only 3 have been added. Some of the choices are pretty obvious, so I'm not going to go super in depth. Others I might talk long about. It's just like with a tier list. Sometimes I will be very, very quick because I think a lot of people just know off the bat. And then others, I feel like I need to really go in depth. Or if there's like multiple stances you could be using, then I might be a little more in depth with that legend. So if I don't spend a lot of time on a legend you play, sorry, I guess. But getting into it, Bodvar, I think Strength Stance is super good for this guy. I mean, you're not really losing anything on Dex. Cassidy, another simple one. You just want to give her defense. Orion, I would say with Orion, there's 2 things you could do, maybe even 3. I would say the one I would use is the defense stance, especially if you're liking to play this character in 2s. But you could also make an argument for using the base stance if you do like the stats. I mean, 4,666 is not that bad at all. It's actually pretty good. Or you could give a little extra killing power and use the strength stance. I'm pretty sure this is what Stingray has used in the past. And he's like, I guess, the premier Orion player. So maybe you want to follow that. But I really don't think you can go wrong. The stats are pretty well balanced. Lord Vrax, weird one. I see Cody use the defense stance, but personally, I don't really agree. I don't know if you really gain anything with Dex, but if the case happened where Guns or Lance was gaining something with Dex, you bet this is the stance to go to. But I would say, honestly, just taking the strength stance is the way to go. Nash is kind of a weird one because it's like, why even play this legend? Like, what stance is really the best? Because, I mean, you could go 2 Dex, and Spear's going to feel awful. Hammer's probably not going to feel the best. But, it's like, I mean, you can't really get much better in every other area when you have 2 Dex, 7 strength, what is that, 6 defense, and then 7 speed as well. That's pretty good. I would probably argue, though, that the strength stance is where you want to go. This character I usually see is more of a 2s-oriented character anyways, so why not add a little more killing power and just take away speed? Still at 6. It's pretty good. Queen Nai, well, given how badly she got done, I mean, dude, either you're going to be taking the deck stance so you can be hitting some side lights into like end lights or whatever to have those true combos off side light, or you're going to be playing speed stance. Personally, I would rock the speed stance. I mean, this is, dude, 2 speed. A scythe hits you once with 1 dare, dude. I mean, you're all the way in Narnia, right? Like, you're gone. With Hattori, I gotta say, the only stance that I personally feel like is worth using, especially right now, and you see basically every Hattori player using it, which doesn't necessarily make it right, but the defense stance, I mean, would you rather have 5 defense or 8 speed, right? It's kind of like the trade-off is well worth, in my opinion. You're still gonna be faster than most of the cast, so I think just locking in defense stance is the play. Sir Roland, some people don't like the low speed that he has, so you might take the speed stance, but I honestly think going ahead and bumping up to 9 defense isn't a bad idea either, especially maybe if you're playing this character in 2s. Lance, Sword, I don't know how much they're really going to be losing on that 1 dex, and also 9 defense, dude. That's crazy. This is basically, this is like some Magyar stats, dude. This is nice. With Scarlet, there's 2 ideas. You could either go the minus dex route, or you could go a plus speed. That's just such a strange one to me because I would imagine a lot of people would want to use the defense stance, but I do understand if people also use the strength stance. Speed, I mean, yeah, you could use speed as well. It depends what you go for. I watch I'm Llama and his stance selections, and this guy is regularly rocking like 2 defense. So I don't know what you're exactly gaining. I know on Thatch you can do delay and sig, so I'm guessing at a certain dex you might need that. I don't know if it's with the dex stance, but even if it isn't, like, there's still multiple routes you can go, but personally I would use defense. I think Ada, absolute freebie. Aside from the low defense, this character has amazing stats, so I would just say lock in the defense stance. Don't ask questions, don't even look at the other stances. Because Qatar characters need to have 5 decks, you might notice a bit of a trend. If you're more of a Qatar player, I would definitely say take the dex. I don't even think you need to be more of a Qatar player. It just makes sense, right? You're losing 1 defense, but what you gain on Qatars, I think, is well worth it. And if you're just heavily playing Hammer, I mean, you still want to have a decent offhand weapon, right? You don't want to just be relying on like sidelight into a sig, even though Sentinel has great sigs. So you could do strength, but it just, I don't know, in current times, it just doesn't seem worth it. Lucian, another one that is kind of free in my mind. I just think the strength stance, it's kind of like Hattori, where if you see a Lucian, you're going to see them running the stance. It just gives him a little more oomph. He already has good killing SIGs, at least on Katars. Guns, they kind of botched them a while ago, but with that being said, it's still good. I mean, you could run defense, but I just don't think it's worth it, especially with the Qatar changes. Okay, the devil himself. I mean, honestly, I think you're either going to be rocking speed, just have the 2 decks. I mean, you're not losing anything, right? Axe and hammer, they're pretty consistent with what they have all the way to like pretty high decks. I mean, maybe minus like a Russian Mafia or something. Or you could just do the strength stance, but really, I think if you're a tried and true Taros player, you're just going to be going lower decks, dude, get another speed and be a freak on it. I used to think that the deck stance for Bryn was worth it, and I'm pretty sure I even have DMs with Blaze talking about it, because I was thinking of picking up Bryn, and he said just take the deck stance because what you gain off of it is pretty good for Spear, right? You get the side air into Endlight. But then I thought about it more, and it was actually someone in Twitch chat, I'm pretty sure, and they actually said that the strength stance, it's like, dude, okay, do you want side air into Endlight for like earlier health, or do you want to have just overall harder hitting character? And, you know, then I thought about it more and I was like, yeah, it just kind of makes sense to take the strength stance. So I would just say strength stance all the way. With the Suri, just go ahead and take strength stance, I would say. Defense is definitely not worth it. Speed, I don't know why you would necessarily want it. 7 speed is nice, but I don't know if taking away the defense is worth. Dex, you're not going to be gaining any extra benefits. As far as I know, I just did some testing, and it seems like even with strength stance, you still hit the recovery into recovery true. Then also you're going to be having all the other benefits that the 5+ Dex guitars have, right? The sidelight combos, and that's the most important part. Barraza, there is 2 routes with Barraza. I would say overall, probably in 1s especially, you would want to take speed, right? It's always nice. He doesn't need all that defense in 1s. But in 2s, and something that Cody, if you have paid attention, actually has used a couple times, is the strength stance, and it takes away a Dex. And I mean, on guns, you might notice the Dex a little bit, but I doubt on Axe you really notice it. I've talked to Cody about it, and he doesn't seem to really be able to tell that much of a difference. With Ember, there's 2 options here, but I do think the defense stance is better. I do think this is the primary one you should be using. But then the speed stance, you're going to be losing out on Sair into Endlight on Bow, I believe, because that is a 6 Dex thing. The question is, do you really need this much speed? Do you want 8 speed or do you want 6 speed, right? Do you think the 4 defense is worth it, or do you think having the higher speed is worth it and losing out on a Bow combo? So Azoth, again, kind of running the same train of thought with the other lower speed legends. If it's 1s, probably take speed, but if it's 2s, dude, I would honestly go ahead and just say take this stance. I mean, Axe is no changes with the Dex. Bow, I mean, you're not really going to be able to get it unless you went with this, and I don't think you really want to be running 3 speed. Currently, Koji's a freebie choice. Just take the 5 defense. I believe in current times, this should be a pretty easy answer for Ulgrim. I mean, dude, I think this character is a freak when it comes to stats. Just take the 2 decks. I'm pretty sure you don't lose out on anything, and if you do, it's super negligible because people who play Ulgrim, I always see them taking 2 decks. So if they're talking about, oh, well, you gain this on, you know, 4 decks or whatever, I mean, they're full of it because they don't even use it themselves at the time. Diana, I would say if you really want to have the benefits of that side air into Endlight I was talking about on Bow, you could play base, but I do think that just taking away Dex and having the 7 speed is also really, really nice. Another simple one on Brawlhalla, or Finn in this case, just take the defense stance. Or I would honestly say, given the weapons, the speed stance is probably a little bit better. But again, in 2s, you could very well be rocking the strength stance. Maybe even 1s, I don't know. I never really touched core. Shang, I've talked about this, I believe in my best legend for every weapon video. He has the perfect stats for both of the weapons, and just taking the strength stance is an easy play for this guy. So there was a period of time where everyone was running the defense stance on Val, and this is pretty good, but I do think that the strength stance is better on Val, 1s and 2s. I don't think it really matters. I mean, if you're running double Val, maybe you can have someone on the defense stance, but at the same time, I just think giving Val a little extra kill power is worth it in this case. And honestly, I think losing out on a speed and defense, because that's really what you're fighting for, right? The chances of you playing base is kind of strange, but I personally say strength. I'll leave it up to you to decide which one. Ragnar these days should basically be a free defense stance. Cross or Luke, you're just going to want to take speed. Easy. So here I would say there's 3 choices. The stats for Mirage or Donatello are really, really good. I personally think that I actually like base stance the most because with speed you're still going to have the benefits. And also, I don't know, it just seems kind of worth it. But strength stance is also insanely good, and also defense is really good. It just depends what you want, what you value, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Just whatever you do, don't use deck stance, because this is some awful stats. Nyx, you have two choices. Either you're going to be running Strength Stance for a little extra killing power, which I think I personally like, and then also you could be running Speed, which these stats are insanely good, especially for a character with Scythe Blasters. The movement you're going to be able to have is really nice, and also if you can place the SIGs, killing's not going to be a problem. Mordex, going against the name, we're going to choose the less dex. We're going to take Strength Stance. That is easy. No reason to really play any other stance. I don't really see much Yumiko anymore, but I feel like when I do, I'm seeing Strength Stance, so I'll just say Strength Stance probably. Okay, this character is just a nightmare to fight. But personal feelings aside about this character, I would say either you're going to want to take Defense Stance because you're still going to have that super high speed and you're going to have overall more balanced stats, right? It's pretty good. Or I would say take Speed Stance and just be flying around the map everywhere, just straight up zooming, bro. Just like Mirage, I've kind of been leaning towards Base Stance with Plague Knight. I do think that Defense Stance can be pretty good, especially since the SIGs kill super early on this character, and maybe just having that little extra defense could save you in a lot of situations. But I would say if you're not using that, then you could go Speed, but you're going to be losing out on the Qatar combo, so that might not be worth it nowadays unless you're just playing exclusively Gauntlets. Or the Strength Stance, you're going to be losing out on a Speed, but you're going to have 8 strength, which is pretty crazy for a character that already kills super early. Like, the rest of the stats here aren't that bad. Sidra, neither of the weapons are going to be really losing out on anything. I mean, they definitely do, but it's like not worth naming. So I would say go ahead, just take the extra defense. This guy. You know, speed can be good, and then also you could take defense, but I honestly think given how he is, I think a lot of people just like to take speed, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe more Zol players are taking defense nowadays, but I just don't really see that many, and I'm not personally one, so I would probably say speed is better, but at the same time, defense might just be as good. I used to be very into using defense stance on Kaya. Dex, I don't find to be worth it, and then, I mean, speed, same thing, but strength is where it's at, dude. Strength, I never liked low dex spear, but I started playing this stance, and I do think I can tell, and I also think, like, when you look at the rest of the stats, if you can deal with the low dex feeling of spear and bow, it's a crazy stance for this character, and honestly, I think more than anything, at least in twos, this character's a freak, especially with this stance. So to the 3 Isaiah players that are out there in the world, one being Boomy and the other being Adam Cool, honestly, strength stance is a play, or speed. I don't think it's really worth this. I mean, this is garbage. We don't even need to talk about that. And then dex stance, what are you going to be gaining on 7 dex blasters or cannon that's worth taking a speed away, or a defense away, and losing out on a speed basically, or, you know, losing out on a strength? It's just, where's the logic? You know, in the last video I did, I said that using defense stance was the play, and honestly, I think I've moved to thinking base stance is actually better for Jiro. I will say, though, maybe there's an argument to be made for dex stance. I don't know what you're going to gain. I haven't done any sort of testing because I don't really play Jiro that much anymore. But also, if you are wanting a little extra killing power, you could take strength, but I will warn you that's going to ruin the Saren to Nair combo that you get for having higher dex. Linfei or Sakura, honestly, just take the dex stance, what you gain, how the character feels, just how the character's built in general. It's meant to take high dex, especially right now. Zariel, you could either take the defense stance and just basically be a freak of nature. I don't see many Zariels, but I would say either take that or take speed. This is probably a little more bearable overall, and I don't know. Again, it's what you value, but I do think having the extra speed, especially with Gauntlet's bow, might feel a little nice. Dhalsim, personally, I would say just go ahead, take away the dex, and leave it at that. Don't ask questions. You don't lose anything. You don't gain anything by adding a dex. I mean, this is just free speed stat. Dusk or Nimue, you could either go defense because the character already hits hard, or you could lean into that feature and just ramp it up, dude. Get another strength and hit extra hard. Okay, keeping it simple on Fate, I personally think speed is the best stance because you're not going to be losing out on anything. And 8 speed is insanely nice, dude. Especially a character Orb Scythe, bro. You're going to be flying around all over the map and like getting gimps left and right. It's going to be like super easy to recover back to stage. It's really nice. Strength stance, you could play, but you are losing out on a speed, and I don't know if that's worth it. Base stance, already said, not really worth. And defense, I just think if you're a noob, you're probably going to be playing defense. Speed stance is the only stance worth using on Thor. Petra, no strength stance. Defense stance, I mean, maybe, I guess. Speed stance is where it's at, all the way. Vector, for the 5 Vector players out there, strength stance, I would say, is the best in the game, but maybe one of you Vector players can argue with me in the comments. I don't really care. Volkov, you could either take the higher speed, but you're going to be killing so late. He doesn't have insane force on his SIGs. But at the same time, they don't kill like super late. But I just don't think the trade-off is worth it. I would just say go ahead, take away a dex, and rock the strength stance. On Onyx, I used to see people run the defense stance. I just don't think that's worth it. Strength, obviously not. And then Dex doesn't even really make sense for this character at all. Just take the speed stance. It's basically a free stat. Jaehyun, another free stat, just take strength. It's kind of interesting with Mako because there's a couple angles you could go from. Defense, you could do, but the thing is you want to have the benefits of Katars, or if you are a Katar player, you want to have those benefits. So I would say probably running Dex makes the most sense for this character overall, right? But if you're playing more so Greatsword, then probably just run speed and just be flying around the map with your Greatsword. Because Katars, Katars, with what I've said with taking Dex for them, like, yeah, you might want to have the combos, but they're not bad without it. It's just you can't rely on the grounded kit as much, right? That's like the biggest thing. Or you can't rely on sidelight as much to lead into stuff unless you have their dodge. Then you'd have a guaranteed setup into like an N-light or D-light. So really, it depends what you want, but I would say speed or dexterity, especially if you're a Katar player. When Magyar first came out, I thought that a lot more people were going to be running speed. The defense stance is just absolutely troll. You're going to live for super long, but it's not worth it. This also just doesn't make sense to take on Magyar. But strength, I do think strength is the best stance in the game. I also do think this character is the worst in the game. So really, I mean, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable on the character, I would say rock it. But speed or strength, I would say take. Okay, for the bug, I think this is a pretty easy one. Just take the minus dex. You're not going to feel a difference. So the stances that are worth mentioning are defense for obvious reasons. And then I would say base, maybe. But speed is pretty good, but you're going to lose out on that dex, which means has bow, right? So you're going to lose out on Saren to M-Light. But 8 speed, I think, might be well worth the trade-off. And then dex, with Scythe, you're going to be able to get the Sare into Nair combo, which is pretty good. And also on bow, you're going to be able to get what is it? You're going to get D-Light into ground pound, which I do think is pretty good to have. But at the same time, you're rocking 4 strength. And people might think like Huin or Moonin stuff kills super early. I don't really know, but I do know that this character has a couple options. Personally, I think I've been playing more base dance than anything else. But I do think if I had to lean towards one, I'd probably lean towards speed. Arcadia, I think there's 2 paths you could go. If you are playing in 2s, I would say go ahead and take defense. But in 1s, I would probably say take speed. It's going to feel a lot better on 5 speed spear than it is on 4. I do think spear in particular is a weapon you need to have speed on, and maybe even greatsword too. So you're not going to be missing out on that strength too much. The character hits pretty hard where she needs to. So if you're in 2s, defense, 1s, use speed. Dude, I'm feeling a little bit lightheaded, but I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, obviously liking and subscribing and even commenting on what you thought of it, that would help a lot. So again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.